Hi, this is Tony Fleecs, and you're watching ConStars.
What's going on, fellow Con Crashers? This is Cruizer, and I'm at Everfree Northwest in Seattle, Washington. This is the furthest I've ever traveled for an event, and I'm here with comic artist Tony Fleecs. Tony, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, he's been very busy doing so many commissions. It's amazing. Now, I asked this question to Andy Price, and he's actually right over there, too. And I'd like to ask you as well, how did you come up with your craft, and how did you apply it to MLP?
I went to art school. Before that, when I was in, elementary school and middle school and high school, I took as many art classes as I possibly could. Regular ones and then extracurricular ones too. I was just always drawing as a kid. And then as I got older, I just didn't stop drawing. And then eventually I started making comics, and then I met the people who edit the My Little Pony comics before they started working on them. And they gave me a heads up and said, "You draw cartoony stuff, would you like to draw this cartoon?" And I said, "Sure." And then I've been doing that for 5 years.
Now, you've also done a autobiography comic book as well back in '06, and even another comic series called Postcards to True Events That Never Happened. Both series were very critically successful. What can you tell us about the stories of these comics?
Thanks, sir. My autobiographical comic was it was how I got into comics as far as making them. At the time, I wasn't really confident writing a fictional story, but I had a lot of stories that I tell people about myself. We go out drinking or at a party, and I would just tell stories. And so I figured if I was going to make a comic, I could just make one about those stories. So I did that in 2006, and then I found a publisher, and they published it, and it's sort of how I got into comics. Once that got published and sold, I was sort of a professional. So.
Would you say in this day and age of self-publishing, it's made it a bit more difficult to get work?
No. What do you mean?
Well, nowadays you can just publish your own stuff or just put it on the internet for people to view. Does that actually take work or a focus away from being a professional?
No, I don't think so. I think anybody, there's so many different ways to make comics now or get into comics that however anybody's doing it is good. The more comics that are out there, the better, and the more ways there are to put your comics out there, the better too.
Now, this is another question I asked to Andy. I'm curious to get your thoughts too. I'm just curious to see if this is different between writer and artist. When they are writing a story, do they ever ask you for input, or do they keep you in the dark until the story is complete?
It depends on who is writing it. Some of the writers I'm closer with than others, just we'd been friends before. Tom Zoller, who writes the Ponies, I'm friends with, and Christina Rice is one of the writers, and I've known her for 10 years. I was in her wedding. So we some of us knew each other before Ponies, and those people, the people that I could just text, they'll be like, "Oh, you're going to draw my story," and then I'll say text them, don't put too many panels, or don't write me any crowd scenes, or when we were doing the Fiendship is Magic series, I would text Christina or email her and say "Oh, I want to draw stuff like this," and she would write back and be like, "Okay, well, I'm doing this, so we could probably fit in something
Do artists ever go to their colleagues for help on how to draw a particular picture, despite the fact that your craft is much different from Andy's?
Yeah, well, I work in a studio with 5 other comic book artists, and we all have very different styles, but the fundamentals are always the same. So if I'm having an issue with something, it's usually not how do I draw this thing, I don't go how do I draw a hand? I know how to do that, but I will sometimes, if something looks off, I'll show it to one of my studio mates and say does this look weird? And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, the problem you're having is this," because they're removed from it. They can see what the problem is from the outside, whereas when you're making artwork, sometimes you're in the zone so much that you can't see the forest for the trees.
Last question. me personally, I'm very excited about the MLP prequel comic that's going to be coming out. Is there anything you can tell us about it that you're legally allowed to?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know much about the content of it. I just did covers, and there's a 4-part like connecting cover for the series that I drew. That's got all the main 6 and all the new characters from the movie. That's pretty fun. And then I drew the trade paperback cover for the main trade paperback. And then when I get home next week, I got to draw the Scholastic Book Club version trade paperback cover. So I'm doing a lot of work on it, but I have no idea what it's about on the inside, except that each issue sort of focuses on one of the new characters.
So it's going to be actually like a 4-part series. Oh man, I can't look. I'm so looking forward to it. Tony, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll see you at BronyCon.
Yeah, I'll be there.
All right, this is the Cruiser. I'll see you next time on ConStars.